Hey everybody, I am your host, Brendan. Welcome to another episode of Swing Batter. I am joined by Todd, my brother, and my father. How you doing, Dad?
Doing great.
We got another wonderful contract for you. I am also excited to hear this one. Dad, who do you have for us to showcase today?
Well, I looked in my bag of bad contracts, and this one was shining bright for me to pick up. I want to look at Dontrelle Willis.
Ooh.
And may I start the story with this? So it's 2003, and they get to the end of the year first, actually win the World Series. They go to the playoffs and win the World Series in 2003. On this team, they had a rookie pitcher who was only 21 years old, named Dontrelle Willis. Dontrelle Willis was amazing. He did win Rookie of the Year that year because he won 14 games and only lost 6. His earned run average was 3.3 earned run average. He started 27 games, pitched 160 innings with 142 strikeouts. Only 58 walks. This guy was the sensation, and at the age of 21, appeared his future was going to be nothing but exciting. He was star quality for sure. He did well. He was with the Marlins for a total of 5 years. In his third year, fulfilling all the hopes and dreams of the team, he won 22 games with a 263 earned run average, and he struck out 170 people in that year, in his third year. And he's a very young man. So I just want to tell you what happened his 5 years with Florida. 2 All-Star games, National League Rookie of the Year. He finished second in 2005 for Cy Young Award. He was really quite a sensation in his early 20s with the Florida Marlins. And he had a couple more years where the Marlins were not going to pay him a lot of money, but they got some good play out of him. I think the thing I bring out is, although his won-loss percentage started to drop as the team got worse, he did pitch a lot. I mean, his innings, the last 4 years, 210, 213, 234, and 241. So he was a really great pitcher. I remember Dontrelle Willis as a tall, skinny guy with a big leg kick, and he was, in those first early years, pretty unhittable. To magnify the attraction, Dontrelle Willis was not a bad hitter. Now, he was not Babe Ruth, but he was a threat at the plate. 1 year batting 261, 1 year batting 286. So Dontrelle Willis was every young boy's dream player. He could pitch, he could hit, and he was 2 All-Star games. Everything was great. And after his 5th year, which was his worst year, he won only 10 games. His earned run average was the highest it ever was in Florida at 517. But he did pitch his 205 innings, and he became a free agent. I believe he was a free agent, or did he get traded? Somebody had some stats on that?
Yeah, so at the end of that 2007 season, he was traded by the Miami Marlins. Anyway, so they traded him to the Detroit Tigers, who they took the trade knowing full well they were going to sign him to an extension. So they signed him to an extension, and the extension they signed him to was 3 years, $29 million. Now you're thinking to yourself, now when we're recording this is 2024, $10 million a year. It's not so hot for a pitcher. You got to understand These were the pitchers that year who were making over $10 million a year. One, Randy Johnson with the New York Yankees, Barry Zito, Mike Messina, Pedro Martinez, Curt Schilling, Roger Clemens, Carlos Zambrano. These were the pitchers that were making over $10 million a year. So this put Dontrelle Willis, even though it wasn't quite $10 million, it was $9.67 million. This put him right on the cusp of that upper echelon of pitchers. Detroit expected him to perform at a level that was just below those top tier pitchers in the 2008 season going in. At the very least, he was going to eat up 200 innings. At the very least, or get the strikeouts. And the player I compared him to when I was watching him, I don't know if you remember Hideo Nomo, when he came out with the LA Dodgers. He had this crazy wonky lineup that almost hid the ball and the motion from the batter until the last second when he released, and it was just this powerful strikeout that just came to the forefront. But that ERA was creeping up. So yeah, Dad, the guy's getting paid. He's getting $30 million a year over the course of 3 years. What happens after he signed with Detroit? What goes on?
It's unbelievable. He actually played in the majors 6 more years. He had a 3-year contract with Detroit. In those 6 years, Dontrelle Willis, all-star, almost a Cy Young, fantastic statistics. In his last 6 years, he won 6 games total. 6 games. Once he signed that contract with Detroit, boom, the stock disappeared.
I feel like something had started to happen in Miami because if you think about his delivery, everything about it was there's something about the mechanics went off because, Dad, look at his, if you can, you have the stats up, look at his walks per 9 inning rate change after he signed with Detroit. When you take a look at that stat, what was the difference there on that one?
This is crazy for a guy who never walked more than the worst year he had in Florida is he walked 3.8 in 9 innings.
Yeah.
First year with Detroit, 13 walks per 9 innings.
He went 10 more walks per 9 innings. Like his control absolutely lost. Like something was broken. And so what ends up happening, he probably starts to overcompensate. Something starts to tweak injury-wise. And so he starts to change his mechanics. And with that mechanic, with how violent that mechanic was, with him turning and hiding and kicking that knee high up, all of a sudden, that mechanic gets a little bit off. And all of a sudden, his control is completely out the window. And what was crazy, he's placed on the disabled list with the Tigers with an anxiety disorder. I'd never heard about a pitcher going on the disabled list for an anxiety disorder until this. It's kind of remarkable.
If you look at his career up to this point, so he's been a thoroughbred. He's been the guy you count on all those innings. He also had the weird delivery. Again, lots of huge leg kick. I also thought he brought some style because he had the tilted brim with the flat tilted brim. If people remember, kids copied him all over the place. He tilted a little bit. He looked into the catcher. He had that great picture where the hat's just not centered right. He wore it with so much style. And then he goes to Detroit. And then again, he gets this huge contract, which he's worked 5 years. He's given up everything to get to this contract. He gets a 3-year deal. He's made it. And now he can't throw strikes. He's struggling with his delivery. To your point, Todd, did he have an injury that he was not as forthright about? We don't know. But again, he never, ever came back to what he was when he was with the Marlins.
I remember I went to a Long Island Ducks baseball game and I saw a pitcher pitching and I said, holy cow, that guy's doing an imitation of the Dontrelle Willis windup. It was Dontrelle Willis. He had since moved on from Major League Baseball and he was going around semi-pro with the Long Island Ducks. which is an entertaining baseball game if you're ever out on Long Island. Catch the Ducks, quack, quack. And he was out there, and he was doing his thing.
I was just studying Dontrelle's statistics, and I misspoke. Dontrelle Willis in his last 6 years did not win 6 games. He won 4. So I was wrong. And Todd, you identified the problem. He couldn't throw strikes anymore. His walks per 9 innings stayed very, very high, higher than it ever was in Florida. So his inability to throw strikes, I remember he kept trying to come back and kept telling people he had it figured out. He never did.
So what's always interested me, especially when it comes to baseball, is there's things that are cemented in our memories of players. And to me, there is nothing that is a bigger memory of him than when he was with the Marlins, pitching in the World Series, coming up as a rookie. I remember him being compared to Gooden. I remember, he was amazing, all the innings he ate up. This stats, everything you're saying about Detroit, the majority of people who remember him are not even going to, no, that's impossible. He wasn't that bad. Everyone remembers him in a good light. When I look back and I don't even recall, he didn't pitch enough after he left the Marlins. So you don't remember him pitching poorly because he didn't pitch a lot. That's one of the big things. He signed a bad deal. It was magnified even worse when you look at these stats. The stats are tremendously awful. But I still have a good memory of him because they won the World Series his rookie year. Can you imagine being a GM? You bring up this rookie pitcher and he performs that wonderfully for your team. Your team ends up in the World Series. He's performing. You're like, we got the next Doc. This is the guy. And he has all sorts of flair. Kids love this guy. Kids loved him, copying him everywhere. So his memory and legacy to this day, if he did a card signing, everyone would line up for it. If you look at the years in Detroit, they're forgotten, because the Tigers are terrible and they don't know what they're doing as an organization. So we never think of them in a good light. And he won in sunny Miami. And that World Series was an epic 7-game series. I still remember to this day. So my memory of him is wonderful. It is not bad. I don't remember I remember him pitching with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I remember him pitching with the Reds. And I always was like, maybe he's back. He never was, but I always was like, maybe it's going to come back because you wanted it. We cheered for him. He is a fan favorite. This contract, hats off to you, Dontrelle, for getting the $29 million from Detroit. It's a terrible contract, stats, all that. But this guy as a player was beloved.
I think he is now continuing as part of the Sportsnet's LA broadcast team for the Dodgers now. Mm. So I think he's still involved in baseball.
I remember when the Diamondback took a flyer on him after 2.5 years in Detroit. They gave up on him, and the Diamondbacks brought him in and said, this guy is too big and too good to not give him a chance. He pitched in 6 games for the Diamondbacks. His earned run average was .685, but the telling stat was this. He pitched 22 innings and walked 27. He just couldn't. He got one more shot. He did finish his career at the age of 29 in Cincinnati. He got better on the walks. In Cincinnati, 75 innings, and he walked 37. It's still a lot, but that's more reasonable. He dropped his ERA to a low since he left Florida, the lowest he's had since he left Florida in Cincinnati, 5.00. Unfortunately, he won 1 game and lost 6, and his career ended. His career was over when he was 29 years old.
So, thank you again for joining us for another episode of Swing Batter as we covered so many good players. This is just another one. And again, Dontrelle, I never hate on these players. These players have got, they did a lot to earn this big contract. He didn't perform for Detroit for numerous reasons. And hats off for signing. These stats are terrible. He's making it into our top rankings of contracts when we look back at who are the worst of the worst. And sadly, he didn't do it like Pablo did. Didn't eat himself out of the game. He kept trying and ended up playing for the Ducks. I am your host, Brendan. That is my father, and that is my brother, Todd. I thank you very much for another episode of That's a Contract.